Hi, everyone. Just give us one moment. We are working on something on this tech side here. I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
I believe we are live now. I think my computer was being slow, but please proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Chair Barry Bialik of the Asheville Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. And I'd like to welcome you to our June 3, 2021 meeting. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen and comment live by phone. Instructions are on our website, but if you'd like to dial in, the telephone number to dial in is 855-925-2801 and use meeting code 7663 to listen in. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I'll do a roll call. We do have some new committee members joining us today. We've added 3 seats to our committee. So far, I think I saw 2 of them are here today. But I'm going to go through and introduce the committee members who are participating virtually. Since we do have so many, we do have new members. If each of us, when we go through and do our roll call and say we're here, if we can just say a little bit about ourselves, just so we all know who we are, that'd be great. I'll now go through and introduce everybody. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. And then if you have a question or would like to speak, you can unmute it or raise your hand. Please remember to mute your phone, which is option *6 after you're done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Please say a quick bit about your background. Okay, I'll start. I'm Barry Bialik, I'm the chair. I'm the CEO of Compact Cottages. We build workforce housing in town. I'm also the CEO of Thirsty Monk. We employ people who need housing. Next, I'll introduce new member Chris Day.
Good morning. My name is Chris Day. I am a resident of East Asheville for the last 17 years. I've got a wife, 3 kids, and 4 pets. I'm also a civil engineer with an extensive background in site development in the city and Buncombe County, with the majority of that work actually being in all types of housing, multifamily, single-family housing, the steps required for the design and approval of that, and the rising cost associated with that work. So I look forward to working with this group and appreciate the opportunity.
Great, good to have you. Scott Adams.
Hi, I'm Scott Adams. I am building a house in West Asheville right now, and I'm an urban planner with the Land of Sky Regional Council, and I've got a real interest in housing.
Thanks, Scott. Babs.
Hi, I'm Babs Phillip. I live in West Asheville. I am a real estate agent with eXp Realty.
Thanks, Babs. Dewana.
Hi, I am Dewana Little. I am the Executive Director of the Wine Cultural Center and the Community Engagement Officer for Self-Help Credit Union.
Thanks, Dewana. Paul Heathman.
Hi, I'm Paul Heathman. I am an AVP at Home Trust Bank, also a mortgage lender, have a real estate background, a longtime North Ashevillean. Thank you.
Let's see what I got. Brian.
Brian Methvin. I'm a strategic consultant professionally, and then have been involved actively in the community working on homelessness issues here in Asheville for the last 10 years.
Thanks. Andy?
Good morning. I'm Andy Barnett. I'm the Executive Director with Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity.
Joe?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Eichelheimer. I am a Kenilworth resident. I've been on this committee for, I think, 5 years now. And I am Vice President of Compliance for the National Center for Housing Management. I'm also on the board of directors for Homeward Bound and have just a lot of interest and experience and heart for affordable housing, especially here in Asheville. So welcome to the new members.
Brandy?
Good morning. I'm Brookie Woodard. I'm the director of the Housing Choice Voucher Program at the Asheville Housing Authority.
Great to have you. And I think that's the only, we have, I see a few names that I don't recognize on the list. Is Zahia Bell Rogers, she's a new member. Is she here under any of these other names that are on or not? Does not look it. So, okay. Well, great. Welcome, everybody. Let's see. That's my little list here. But first thing we'll do is go through our minutes from last. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from last meeting? So do I have a motion to accept them?
I'll move to accept them.
Thanks. Second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. If we can all just raise our hands for an aye to accept the minutes, that would be great.
Aye.
All right, thanks. All right, great, thanks. Also want to go ahead and one more introduction we should make. We also have Councilwoman Mosley is in. She's our council liaison. She's here today.
Good morning.
And then we have, I think, city staff. I saw Paul. Cynthia, if everyone from staff who's here, who's part of our meetings, if you can also just introduce yourselves, so everyone in the new members know who you are and what your role is. That would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Barry. Good morning, everybody. Paul D'Angelo with the city's Community and Economic Development Department, mostly community development. And we've got a couple other staff members I can introduce on the line. I believe Christina Harris is here, as well as Angelica Driver, two great team members who make all of this happen. So a special thank you to them.
Great. Thanks. And I think I saw, is it Laura Nieder? She's new, right?
She is. Sorry about that, Laura.
I'm Laura Neer. I've been here about a month and a half, but I'm working in the community development department, and I'm the new CDBG CV admin. So I'm working a lot with the COVID-19 funds.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, we're going to move on with our agenda. One thing, just since there are new members, and one of the things, there's a lot of acronyms that we talk in, and so we always want to try to be even more careful than usual to explain what some of our acronyms are. I still get lost in them myself, and I think we've had some cheat sheets in the past, and we probably should, with our new members, try to go through that. But if there's terms or acronyms we're talking in and you don't understand, raise your hand just so we can help clarify them, and we'll do our best. Like I said, I sometimes don't even know them all myself, but there's people here who do know what they all mean. So thanks. We'll start with our community development updates, which look like they were from I think the last HCD meeting.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. Again, Paul D'Angelo with Community Development. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of our updates that we put out regarding our regular community development updates, the COVID-related updates, and the homeless-related updates, 3 separate documents. And just an FYI, I think at the bottom of all of them, but definitely under the community development updates, we do have an acronym cheat sheet there to help out a little bit. So hopefully that'll guide everybody. And Barry, just so you know, we are working on, we did a welcome letter that worked out really well with the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium. Christine and I are working on putting something together similar for the AHAC membership. So a special welcome to Chris Day, Brookie Woodard, and we can reach out to Zahia Bell Rogers to see about attending this meeting. So welcome to the new members, and we'll try to get a special welcome letter to y'all shortly.
Great. Now I had a couple couple questions. Let's see, on the DPA, is it on? Where are we at with that? Is that moving?
So that is moving forward. We're putting that out to RFP. I think in last month's update, we kind of gave ourselves to the middle of June to get that back up and back out on the street. So that should be happening in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so there'll be a new RFP coming out on that. Okay. On 319 Biltmore's, any new news on that one?
The Homes Urban has been selected as the partner there, but we are bringing an update about 319 Biltmore, just of where we are to the Housing Community Development meeting, HCD, on Tuesday, June 15th at 10 a.m. So we'll have an update on where we are in that process.
Okay. Cool. Let's see. Is anything? I know we talked last meeting about Restaurant Court. Has anything new happened with that?
We met with a representative of Kirk Boos with several different department heads and had a good conversation about pathways forward. We are anticipating them coming back at some time soon with either an additional loan request for Restaurant Court as well as some garage conversions.
Okay. Pineview.
Pineview is coming back to HCD in June. I believe they're going to attempt to pivot away from the condominiums to another development that can make more fiscal sense. As you all know, there's been huge challenges in the market regarding the construction of housing from multifamily to single family. So they are struggling to make numbers work. And they have an idea to pivot away from the 12 condominiums to a larger development of about 40 units. So they're going to bring that to HCD on June 15th, Housing and Community Development Committee.
Okay. Any of the single family lots? I haven't heard much about that lately either. Is that any of those moving forward?
I'm like a broken record this morning, Barry. We will
I know. Sorry.
To HCD. It's all about Councilwoman Mosley. HCD on June 15th, we'll get an update on those single family lots as well. And usually what happens there, Barry, is the week before, which is next week, we're prepping for all that. So don't have super up-to-date information, but next week we'll be prepping all those documents for those various projects you're asking for and present them at HCD. We encourage everybody to attend those meetings. And of course, we'll bring updates, further updates back in July or August, whenever our next meeting is.
Okay. So I think in our last meeting, we discussed, because a lot of these projects that some of them went to HED before coming through us, some we had some input on, but some it was later. And I know we had talked about maybe some of this stuff kind of floating through us so we can help vet it and discuss it before HED. Was there any discussion about that at HED?
So what our plan to do there is, if I understood the meeting last month correctly, is that any new housing trust fund loan requests come through HCD. So any new ones we will bring through to you. I don't think I have any new housing trust fund requests at the moment, but those are the ones that we will bring towards you or bring through this committee to help vet projects. Okay.
Do you think, I guess maybe we should specifically ask then that these projects that have to get redone, like example, the Pineview one, if the project is now changing focus, if that should run through us for some discussion before going through HCD?
Sure. I can check with the developer of both Restaurant Court as well as Pineview. If they would prefer not to come in June, come back to you in July or August, and then proceed to HCD. That's where with older projects, I don't want to hold up any development there, sure. But I can always make that request that y'all would like to see that before going to HCD and get their feedback. Again, we are committed to bringing any new housing trust fund loan request to your committee.
Yeah, cool. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I just think there's some things that maybe we can really, we can maybe help on those to smooth it over and maybe even help the explanations before it gets to HCD that we could have some input on.
I'll follow up with those developers, Barry.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's it. Does any other committee members have questions on updates or thoughts on the these updated housing trust fund requests running through us before HCD?
I had one question when I was reviewing the HCD notes. It made reference about some policy changes. I was really intrigued about the potential Luigi change to promote changing market rate units to affordable units. Where does that stand, and what's the process on that, Paul?
Thanks, and again, welcome, Chris. So the Luigi policy update went through the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, this committee, I believe, in May, and we took that, it was approved. We took that to HCD, Housing and Community Development Committee, mid-May, and that was approved. So we are on council agenda for June 22nd. And it's pretty much flowing through exactly the way it was passed. We have massaged a little bit of the policy regarding the outreach for not only the neighbors immediately around the multifamily building or the construction or the housing, but also for equity and inclusion. So we have a good list there, which we're really excited to share with council on June 22nd.
Thank you.
Great.
And Barry, I believe our new member just joined the meeting.
Yeah. Hi, Zahia, we see you just joined. Can you just say a quick hello and give a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Zahia Bell Rogers, and I currently work at Helpmate, which is a domestic abuse agency where we help survivors and those who are become advocates find their voice and their freedom. I've lived in Asheville for 26 years, and I love the city that I am a part of, but sometimes it makes me angry. And it's nice to be a part of this board.
Great. It's great to have you. Thanks. Okay. Any other questions from committee members about our updates, community development updates? Look at anything specific on the other updates to CDBG and the CD homeless. Anything you want to share in particular, Paul?
Nothing at this point in particular. Just as a reminder, the CDBG COVID updates have a lot of resources there for individuals and families that may be struggling with rental assistance. So please take a look at that. It's a lot of information. I think y'all know we try to keep these updates and our policies to 6 to 8 pages in hopes that folks will read them. If anyone has a better idea on how to present that information, it's just a lot of information on rental assistance with a lot of funding out there. So I do hope that people take advantage of that guide as well as share it. There's also really important links and helpful information at the bottom of all of our updates. And so please keep those in mind.
Great, thanks. One thing just on from COVID-related rental assistance, I just want to share. It's something I hadn't thought about, but I've just been hearing more recently with the eviction moratoriums ending, that a lot of the rent that was not that people who were not able to pay during COVID, and now so it wasn't that the rent wasn't due, some of it was just deferred. So I'm hearing a lot of stress from folks that now basically some of the apartment complexes and developments have basically almost a debt on folks, and they're having to pay back the past rents. So it wasn't necessarily, wasn't eliminated, it was just deferred. Have you heard anything about that, or any discussion, or is there any kind of funding mechanisms to help folks with that?
We've heard a little bit of that, and I probably, all of you experts are better at this than even us maybe, but a lot of the data has been difficult to shake out because of the fact of the eviction moratorium. Are people really about to get evicted? Are they paying? Are they not? Some people have just been not paying in anticipation that they can make it up later. The data is really difficult to figure out because of that eviction moratorium, which I believe ends on June 30th. That said, that funding that came through to the county from the U.S. Treasury, I don't want to speak, and that I believe is being handled by their Department of Health and Human Services. That was about $8 million in rental assistance. And if I have been hearing correctly, there's still a majority of that funding available to assist individuals and families that may be behind on their rent. Our COVID dollars, the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, CV, COVID dollars, those are HUD dollars. Those are kind of come with HUD restrictions. But the funding that went to the county from the U.S. Treasury has, I believe, less restrictions on it and is a little bit easier to access. So I would definitely guide people to our CDBG COVID updates, which talks about that county funding. And I really, we did meet with an apartment complex last week, and we shared that resource with them because they had mentioned something similar that you had mentioned, Barry. And Laura is on the call, and she just recently started the last 4 to 6 weeks, but we've challenged her to be our CDBG COVID expert with those funding, which is very difficult because, golly day, regs and compliance and updates seem to come out weekly. Laura, do you have anything to add briefly this morning?
Yeah, I do. So I know the moratorium is ending, July 1st, June 30th. But I did want to say we do have, with the money I've been working with through Pisca Legal and Homeward Bound, we do pay for arrears. So, if somebody had missed a payment 2 months ago, we are allowed to go back and make those payments. And we have found out that there is a 6-month, you can pay up to 6 months of rent, but we think now the new HUD regulations are saying that one arrear payment is not the equivalent to 1 month of rent payment. We think we got to double check that you can do 3 arrear payments and it will equal 1 month of payments. So hypothetically, you could do, over 6 months of payments if you're counting the arrears in that. But I do have to double check on that. The HUD regulations are always changing, so it's a little difficult to keep up with it. But arrear payments are something we've been working with, and they are being used, especially by Pisca Legal.
Okay. Yeah,
Laura, I appreciate that, and kudos to her, Barry, if you don't mind, because literally we're getting new guidance, it seems, or clarification weekly. It's been hard to follow, like a lot of this funding. We're doing our best. Any ideas or suggestions, please share them with us. We're happy to adjust.
Cool. I wonder if that's, so I assume you like with some of the apartment complexes that y'all are in discussion with, so that they have a resource to send folks to. I think it's going to start to pop a lot more at the end of this month, because I'm starting to hear more and more about it from people in the community. Do we know how the housing authority handled arrear rents? Was anything forgiven, or is it put on deferred?
So we work a little bit differently, because when someone's income changes, we make an adjustment so that we're covering more a portion. I do think that they are working with those additional funds for people who have gotten in arrearage so that they're applying for those funds as well to cover those. But like I said, for the majority of our folks, when they report any type of job loss or reduction in hours, we can make an adjustment to pick up more of the rent.
Okay.
I will also say, just last thing for this, especially with the housing authority, because of HUD's regulations, we're pretty sure that duplication of benefits, we're not allowed to specifically give out these payments for people in public housing. So just something to keep in mind because it counts as a duplication of benefits, and that's one of their strictest policies right now is COVID money.
Okay, that's good to know.
And yeah, Barry, let me jump in for a second. Usually at
Sure.
affordable sites, when you run into a situation like this, although this, of course, is unique to anything that any of us have ever experienced, the tenants will be placed under repayment agreement. And there are regulations around, how much of their income, like Brandy was saying, the tenant rent that they pay and the subsidy that's paid on their behalf is directly related to their individual family income. So when they go under repayment agreement, it's still held to an affordable standard, which it can only be a certain increase to the amount that they pay over time, regardless of how much they still owe. So I'm sure that is being factored in or will be factored into this as well.
Okay. Are there, for the rent on this rental, I guess, assistance or arrears assistance, is there, is the programs tied to any kind of maximum AMIs? Like, who is this available for? Like, because I mean, again, for individuals, I'm also hearing this from like small landlords that, they've had tenants who basically the tenants maybe haven't, like someone owns maybe a fourplex and they've got tenants who haven't paid in a while, and it's obviously hurting them. So if they knew that there's a resource that they could put their tenants to, that might be helpful. Is there income max guidelines for this?
Yeah, I would have to check and maybe send that information to Paul, but we do have a percentage that they have to meet AMI wise. I want to say it's 50, but don't quote me on that. I have to go back and double check. But Pisgah Legal has been probably the most, they're really good with this policy and carrying it out. So if you want to, they have to be taken in by Pisgah Legal as a client. Gotcha. So, I mean, that's a really good for people who aren't able to pay their rent right now. And we are working on round 3 contract right now because the moratorium's ending, June 30th. We're trying to push this through as fast as we can. And I know because the whole working with Pisgah is to keep people from being evicted. We're working with people that are more likely to stay in the housing if the money is going to help them stay in there versus, somebody who's going to be homeless, no matter how much of this money they're getting to keep them from being evicted. It's hard to word, but I can send the policy over to Paul and he can send it to you possibly. And then I'll get back to you guys on the AMI percentage because I'm not positive on what it is right now.
Great.
Appreciate that, Laura. And a reminder that, we tried to be clear in the CDBG COVID updates that are there, as well as all the other resources. So it is definitely worth a look on this because it's a good point, Barry, that June 30th is around the corner. And if I may, if it's helpful to the group, I can share 2 minutes a personal story, which is I came from Wilmington, North Carolina, and we rent our unit out down there as an affordable unit. And our tenant was in the type of construction where he was out of work for several months. He struggled with utilizing the first round of the CV dollars, the COVID CDBG dollars. It went like that, and the state money went like that. But this last round of funding that went to the county, New Hanover County, we were able to write a letter, and it worked very well that they were able to catch up on the arrears. And because of the money in that system that I don't think is being utilized, the county paid 3 months in advance as a courtesy to the tenant. So the working in coordination with your tenant is very helpful. And they were very easy to work with at the Department of Health and Human Services down in Wilmington. And so happy to report for my own sake, for our client, our affordable housing tenant, that they are now caught up and actually their rent was paid through the summer.
That's great. That's actually a great example, Paul. Thanks for sharing. Because and also, so you're saying as the landlord kind of help facilitate that connection.
Probably because of the world that we live in, that we're aware of more resources, but you do have to write a letter about somebody being behind on rent and in arrears.
Yeah.
And they called me the same day.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking it's kind of what I'm thinking in our case, it might be similar, that it might be the landlords or the apartment complexes who might be taking the lead of some of this help.
And a lot of other thing that hasn't fleshed out in the data yet is small landlords, like you were talking about, and how they're affected and trying to struggle through the systems. So again, if our resources can be helpful, my email, Laura's email, we're happy to see what we can do to help navigate.
One last thing, I just looked it up into the contract. It's 80% at or below 80% AMI with priority given to people at 50 or below.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, this is very helpful, and I think it will become a bigger conversation point after June 30th. All right. If there's no other questions, comments about community development updates, we'll move along. We're going to move to our very sad list of available homes in the city of Asheville, less than $275,000. The list I think I prepared had 5 houses on it. And most of them were in need of rehab. And, there's some condos, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was another 4 or 5. And then, lots of closings and under contracts. But yeah, the available homes less than $275,000 was really bad. Obviously, since it's a list we've been preparing for several years, and I've never seen it like that. And I don't really know of much in the way of new housing stock, at least in the for sale available, homes coming online. Because I guess any thoughts on our list, comments? Anyone have any houses less than $275,000 they'd like to list?
I can say that the list I wasn't surprised, but it really made me sad.
Yeah.
I bought my house in 2007 for $173,000, and it was appraised for almost twice that. And I still need work done on my house. And I think about now, if I was a young woman, Black woman trying to buy a house like I was when I was 28 trying to buy my home, I wouldn't be able to live in Asheville. I wouldn't be able to live and work, live where I work. So, the list was very sad and disheartening about the city that we call home.
Yep. Andy?
Well, this doesn't really get to the fact. This doesn't make this list any less depressing, but I noticed that the HUD qualified sales price for the home program for Buncombe County increased to $279, I think, up from $256 last year. So this is an annual amount that is the maximum limit that would qualify as an affordable sale through HUD's home program. So we have always that 275 number that we've used to create this list before was something greater than the home qualified sales price. I don't know if based on that we want to continue to stay with 275 as the number that we use for the filter, or increase it to match the home qualified sales price. Again, I feel like it's a little bit of a slippery slope to keep moving the number up when it's just pushing things further and further out of reach. We know that the incomes for most of our neighbors haven't increased at the same pace of that, but that might be one way to at least bring in a different slice of this, is to follow that home qualified sales price.
No, that makes sense. It's if we're going to have our list based on any kind of guideline, then that would make sense. Is everyone Is everyone okay with? I don't think it'll make much of a difference, but you never know. Is everyone okay if we start moving forward, adjusting that to 279? If that's you saying 279 is the new HUD number?
That's right, Barry. That's the new maximum allowable sales price for a.
I could add this is Paul Heathman. I could add just that the organizations that do down payment assistance, some of these other organizations are also increasing limits for income eligibility. So I think it's appropriate that we can open that up a little bit. Yeah.
It's Paul here from Community Development City. I would just caution that, it is the home limit, and I hear where Andy's coming from, but the general idea of that home price was to kind of come up with a price that was we could work with an individual or family at or below 80 or 100% AMI. I think it's definitely worth noting that home price, but and maybe we could go up to 280 or something easy like that. But just I don't want to tie it to any specific program, if that's okay. Just looking at overall incomes would be my suggestion. But of course, Barry and Andy, whatever y'all choose is great.
Okay. Yeah, my experience has been whenever we at least have sold houses in that 250, 270 range, they usually have of that purchase price maybe between 2,000 and 6,000 is in almost like seller assistance back anyway. So I think at least if nothing else, that extra little bit might be like a closing cost can go back to the buyer.
To Paul's point, that the local AMI went up as well, not quite the same amount. So creating a new number based off of affordability at 80% of AMI might be a better way to set that, to set our filter.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I was just the tracking of these numbers. I found it really interesting to look at them. Is it just kind of a gauge in what we use to see trends, or is there something else we're doing with that number?
We're basically using it to measure what stock there is. The kind of, I'd say the affordable home ownership has been one of the most elusive components of what we as a committee can do. It's like there's apartment complexes that are being worked on, and there's there's units of projects, rental projects that get set aside, but the home ownership component has been very difficult, and we're really trying to figure out how we can incentivize, what incentives there can be, or how to create more stock. But really, it's a good base measure of how little stock there is,
right?
And then to kind of look at who are the developers that can maybe focus on that. Andy, how do you available habitat homes? Are there available habitat homes? Is that something that we might be able to add to the list, or do you have waiting lists, or how do you work?
So we have buyers for all of our homes before we begin construction. It's just part of the way I say always, 99% of the time. Periodically, we have homes that do come up for sale, and you'd see those on this list. We've seen them periodically. There's been one of our homes that comes back on the market, and they usually hit at this price point and show up here. More and more with the rising cost of land and rising cost of lumber, it makes more sense for us to exercise our right of first purchase and buy those homes back and resell them within our pool of buyers. And when you sell a house, just remind me, is your standards, it cannot be less than appraised value? That's right. Yeah, we sell our homes at appraised value. And what would you say some of those prices? I'm just curious, what does a habitat house sell for now? Well, appraised value on most of our houses is running somewhere, I'm going to just in around 210, 215, depending on the size. We've seen some higher and some lower. Just to be clear, that's the sales price, and then we split that into two different mortgages. So a payable first mortgage and a deferred payment second mortgage. And then take out whatever, down payment assistance or other public sector subsidy that goes on the house to bring the first mortgage loan down to something that is 30% of the buyer's income.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I don't think Mountain Housing has had many in city new homes. I can get an update list, but I can't recall of any projects that they've had. Most of their homeownership projects have had to be outside, in the county. Does anyone know of any? I can't think of any projects in the city.
They're focusing their new construction on places where they can use USDA financing tools and tools.
And Barry, usually, and just quickly, grateful for our partnership with Andy and Habitat, and Scott and MHO. Unfortunately, I think at best, due to the numbers right now, MHO can only do about 5 down payment assistance loans within the city each year, give or take, because of the high costs. So this is a real problem and a real worry, and watching these numbers dwindle without a solution in sight. And as I've said at last month's meeting, I feel a little bit out of tricks here, and I'm not sure what to do with it. Again, grateful for Habitat and MHO for all that they do, but we're pushing a generation of individuals and families into rental and out of the opportunities of wealth building in home ownership. And I hate to say I don't know what to do, and it's a real problem.
Yep. Yeah.
Agree. Chris, you asked why we keep that list. I think it's that list more than anything is a call to action for us. Not that we have a solution, but we've watched that number go down, 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 and we know that sellers are preferring cash buyers from buying sight unseen from out of town, and those people are preferring the prices in our affordable range as second homes. So yeah, we're in a pickle, and that's kind of our metric as to how we're doing.
It was also helpful to, as we were going through the down payment assistance program, to know what the gap is needed. To know that, because if there's a significant down payment assistance gap that's needed, but it's almost like if the inventory doesn't exist, it doesn't matter what that amount is. It's like the subsidy could be up to $90,000, and it still may not put a home in reach. So I think that was kind of the target of up to 275, maybe 280 is where maybe a down payment assistance loan could help someone at an 80% or less AMI get into a home. And if the stock isn't there, then the question really is, what is the true amount of down payment assistance needs to be? So it helped with us measure that gap as well.
So,
Luana.
One thing is, I like the list of the 275 and under. I think it is super important to see that. But there are those lower. I've seen houses like in my house hunt over the last year at 145 to 50. So I'm like, oh, I found a steal in the city. But it's those upper houses that you can't finance because financial institutions are not financing houses that need repair. They have to be ready to move. And so I like this list because most of the houses that I actually looked at, some houses that was on this list last year for my own home purchase, and they are move-in ready, like financeable houses. And so is that thing that's happening as well in the city, is those houses that are affordable are not financeable, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so I think,
Luana, that you make an excellent point there. That there's a product gap in rehab housing, lending. And the USDA offers 100% financing rehab loan, but that's not going to be in our city. That's going to be in rural areas. And it is true that if we had some kind of product or program in there to fix up the $145,000 house to make it to where the systems are functional and we could get a conventional loan on it, that we would have more inventory, usable inventory.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'll be curious how. I mean, I know the land trust will have a few coming on soon. So yeah, I'll be curious how new stock comes on. I mean, there is a little bit of stock. I mean, but it just goes fast, and I think that there's a lack of developers that can do the scale that's needed to get housing down at that cost. I think there's a few more comments, then we can move on. Scott?
Sure, thanks. So speaking of product gaps, just jumping over for a moment, I'm going to hold up so everyone can see that. I'm not sure if everyone saw this earlier this spring and summer. At the state level, there was actually a bill proposed, I think it was Senate Bill 349. I can share this around. It did not make it out of committee, but in essence, it was a bill to basically legalize what's called missing middle housing, duplexes, triplexes, quads, in virtually all residential zones. Interestingly, the North Carolina League of Municipalities opposed it, and the North Carolina American Planning Association chapter took a fairly cool, what I'll say was middle of the road approach to it. Several cities and counties across the state issued letters and resolutions in opposition to it. As a professional planner with the acronym AICP behind my name, American Institute of Certified Planners, I saw several other people with that acronym behind their names opposing the bill. In a nutshell, the opposition to it was an argument over loss of local control, and there was also significant confusion on the bill being portrayed as eliminating single-family detached zoning. That was not the proposition at all. It's basically a proposition to allow just more market-driven choice. You go to the grocery store, if you're looking for mayonnaise, you got at least 15 choices. In the housing market, there's maybe 2 or 3. So I can share this around, and this may also come up. I may also bring this up in our discussion on potential UDO tweaks and reforms later in our discussion. But I think this would be an important thing for the group to look at. And also, like I said, it's dead or lying in wait for now, but I think it will come back in some form. And this is not unprecedented across the United States. The state of Oregon had a similar bill that did pass. City of Minneapolis famously recently made single-family detached zoning not an only choice through their comprehensive plan, and they're working on it for their zoning. So long story short, planning and zoning puts most people to sleep, but it's one of the most substantial things you can change that will actually affect what gets built.
Happy to say it is my understanding, apart from our committee influence, that the city of Asheville did not sign on and protest, which was a big step for our city to not do that. And it was actually surprising to some, but it was great that, at least we as a city recognized that some of this could have benefited, so we didn't sign on to oppose this. That's my understanding. And there are, from some of my conversations with people within the city, I've had someone within the city tell me that they look at single-family zoning as a form of redlining. And so I'm glad that there is a progressive way of thinking within our city that, maybe can affect some change. But we'll see where this goes. I've followed that bill. I've had a conversation with Senator Edwards about it. I think, Andy, do you still have your hand up? Is anyone else?
So just Barry, Paul here, just to wrap this up a bit, and we'll move on in the agenda. If anyone has any creative thoughts around certain things, like we've talked about this before, is there a way to stop the cash buyers? Is there a way to legally, of course? So, California puts a wait list before you can actually sell a building, that it's given an opportunity. Any kind of creative thinking. I know it's probably big thinking with laws, but we really to try to do something there. And on a positive note, we've recommended some type of home ownership forum for this group. And Matt Allen is joining us from Lotzar today to talk later in the agenda about a potential partnership for some type of forum. So we'll get to that, but just to try to think solutions there. And I also want to thank Babs for providing us the list of the overall prices too, which continues to inch up of the overall sales. So thanks, Barry.
Great.
Paul, I was just going to say that is an interesting question about, at least comparable to California for cash only buyers laws. That would probably be something done at the state level here, certainly, because we're not a home rule state.
Right.
Cool. Great. All right. Any other comments on this? We're moving on. I think we're clear. So we go to unfinished business. So our task forces. So for new members and old members, here's what. So what we're doing is creating two. We're calling them task forces, and we're focusing basically based on our committee member specialties and interests. We took two approaches. One's going to be called Connect, which is basically how to kind of connect with the community a little bit better for actually finding out exactly what the needs are and find out who those are in need and how we can assist, and some of the research that's needed for that. And then Build, which is really kind of a guidance and looking at what are the roadblocks for building and developing affordable housing in the city and how we can advise of those. Task forces allow our committee members to meet outside of a normal meeting time and to expand the task force to include community members that are not on our committee. So I've reached out to for on the Build committee, the AHBA, the Home Builders Association, about builders that are interested in affordable housing, for getting them to join. I think this month we probably could set up and look at meeting. The one thing that I clarified with, I think she's assistant deputy city clerk, Jerry Goldberg, just to understand, because we can't create, we have to be careful how we create committees, whether we need to have, notice meetings or not. So in a task force, as long as we don't have a quorum of our committee members on it, we can meet and have other people join, and then we report to the committee with our findings. So that means when we've got our members who've indicated which committees they would like to join, but what we just have to be careful is that balance is in place. So we may need someone to basically sit out and not be on a committee, so we actually don't have a quorum on any of these committees. But that'll allow us then to meet and kind of discuss specific tasks that then we bring and advise and share with our committee. So with that, build focus, and that the build focus really is to help identify from our experiences what are the pieces that roadblock development and how we can help with that. We went through our last meeting and kind of said who would be interested in that. Chris, I would assume that would be the committee that would be the task force we would ask you to be on.
That makes sense to me. Yes.
Yep. And I guess it's kind of new to you, Brandy and Zahia, but if you can kind of just share from that where your backgrounds think you will lie, or if you don't think you'd have the time for the extra, because we do need someone we'll actually need one person to kind of sit out, so we don't have a quorum on any committee.
Well, I actually had to have heart surgery July 1st, and so I would like to sit out if possible.
Okay. Yeah, maybe what we can do is we'll figure out the balance of seats, then we can rotate. Maybe we rotate that seat. I think we were heavy, for my last count, we were heavy on those who wanted to be on the Connect side and a little light of those on the Build side.
I have no problem being on the Build side.
Okay, great. All right, cool. Well, I'll do the compilations of that, and then we'll maybe send out kind of an invite for having our first task force meeting and see when times might work. So I'll reach out throughout the month for setting that up, and then what we would do is then report we'll have an agenda item on our normal monthly meetings that then someone from the committee will kind of report back with our discussions.
And
Barry, I'd also like to be in on the build side.
Oh, sorry.
Barry, this is Brian Messman. I'd also be interested on the build side.
Okay.
Barry, I'm not sure what side I'm on. I don't think I'm on any, to my knowledge.
Let's see. I think I have my notes from our last. I'll have to dig through. I'll have to dig through my notes, but where do your leanings lie?
Like, honestly, I'm like both, because I'm interested in build, but my specialty would probably be the connect side of things. Yeah. So you could put me where it won't cause the quorum, I guess. It's fine with me.
Yeah. But I'll compile that and send that out within the week, and then we can see about each committee, trying to find a time to meet, and then look at for who non-committee members who we might look to join. Like I said, I've reached out on the build side to the Home Builder Association, and they were going to recommend a few builders to join, because I think the broader input from the community will really help with this. It allows us to kind of discuss on a more technical level, maybe, that would help come back to our committee. And our committee is meant to kind of recommend policy changes, and I think, but there's a lot of technical discussions that have to go in to make policy changes. So I think having some of those discussions outside would really help us be efficient.
Hey, Barry, what is our current quorum number? Since we've added.
Yeah, so we're now, let's see, I think we're now 13 members. So that would mean ideally would balance out at 6 apiece with 1 alternate.
Okay. Thanks.
And I think we're really close. I think we're really close with that balance now. So I think that's what we'll target. I do have my notes from one of our last meetings with everyone indicated to join, and now if Brian and Dewana weren't there, now I have their leanings. So we'll put that together and put emails out for that.
Barry, Paul here quickly. What are the task force? I wanted a little clarity on what the different tasks for quickly, just for next month's agenda.
Sure. So one was called, basically we kind of we talked about 3, but just for simplification, we merged it down to 2. One is called Build. And basically that's to look at what are some of the barriers for actually developing and building affordable housing, and getting some real world examples of what are those barriers. So how we can make recommendations, especially specifically for like there might be like incentives that can be leaning for affordable housing that we can put in those, but to identify those barriers to see how we can help advise what policy changes might be recommended to reduce those. And then the connect is something that, we've discussed that we need more community input and reach and specific guidance, like how many, what are the bedroom size realities that people want? We know there's a waiting list of 1-bedroom voucher homes, but what size home do people really need? Where are they willing to live? Are they willing to live only in certain areas of Asheville, and then almost create like it's not really a database, but just so there's just some data collection that will really help some of these discussions we have to then say, well, we know there's a lack of, this 1-bedroom voucher housing is one that I come back to, is because I know that's where the biggest lack is, but there's also a lack of family housing. But we don't really have some of that quantified the same way. So I think some of these these task forces, sorry, I need to call it task force, might help clarify some of that for us.
And then there's the question of, can you build it legally and easily?
Yeah. So and I think that's where our committee will help merge those. So like what the community is saying their need is for right now, and what is like, and that dollar amount is an example. Like we're talking about 275, 280. But really, should we be saying, well, really, we're 80% of the people that need them, really, it can't be more than $210,000. and then they're going to need $80,000 in down payment assistance. So I think really knowing the actual needs rather than talking about maximums might help, and that's what I think some of that Connect committee might really help us kind of put the stories of the folks and give give the specific examples of what's needed, and we can almost try to match. I look and almost try to match them. If we know that there's a need for 220,000 3-bedroom homes, maybe on the build committee there's a way that we can kind of create I don't know. It's not a policy that can incentivize the developer to build that, but I think if we know where the demand is, that we'll be able to better design the policy to adjust for the builders and the developers to meet that demand. That's kind of the thought of where I think our committee can help merge those. It's the things we discuss at every of our meetings, but we just don't have the time to get in the technical weeds or get that community input. But each of us on our own throughout the month interface with folks and development services and zoning, and I think we as individuals and then bringing in other community members could help get some of that data. Does that help you some?
Yes.
Thanks. And I know I've also for the build side, I've talked with Ben Woody, and they're interested in one of their members being part of that as well. And then I think I'm going to be joining DCAG? It's like I'm going to be joining that advisory group for development services as well.
Thanks, Barry. And just a friendly reminder, we're halfway mark, and we do have 2 presentations with Purpose Built and Affordable Housing Innovation.
Okay. So we'll move on from the task forces, but I'll follow up within the week with emails on that. And then kind of we have that list of challenges and code. That's really about what we're trying to tackle with our committees. So we can see that's a link on our agenda, so we'll look at that in the task forces. Scott, do you have any updates on the Planning Open Space Amendment Task Force?
Still moving forward. We've had honestly a bit of pushback from the Urban Forestry Commission. There's been a lot of requests from a couple of members within that group. That's just as a reminder for the Open Space Task Force. That's one out of, I believe, 8 or 9 separate groups, everything from Downtown Commission to our group and the Development Customers Assistance Group. It's interesting, just a moment ago, you were saying that you had been in touch with the city or one of the assistant city attorneys about quorums from groups. Interestingly, there are 4 members from the Urban Forestry Commission on the Open Space Task Force versus several of the other groups, which only have 2 members. So I'm not quite sure. I think that's four UFC members out of 9 total members. So I guess it's not technically a quorum, but it's kind of packing the court. In a nutshell, still debating some things. I think Margie and I are definitely trying to, keep an eye toward sort of a balance of, all things open space. I think that the main thing of the UFC, the Urban Forestry Commission, is that they are pushing pretty hard for a lot more open space, spatial actual considerations, and for tree coverage. Interestingly, there was an updated tree preservation ordinance passed last fall, which was opposed by the Planning and Zoning Commission 6-1. The one dissenting Planning and Zoning Commission member is also on the Open Space Task Force. So yeah, still working through some things, just trying to keep a balance and a consideration of the larger needs of the city. And I think Dave, you want to speak just briefly to that, because Chris is also is on that task force representing the Development Customers Advisory Group.
Yes, I'm representing the DCAG, and I echo what Scott said. I went on that committee with the sole purpose to point out the issues in the ordinance that really roadblock affordable housing. The ordinance has many incentives in there for creating affordable housing in terms of density bonuses, yet they're not feasible because of other roadblocks, open space being one of them. And that was my goal going on there. I've learned a lot with the fact that a lot of other people are coming in with other goals of this open space committee. So it's a continued conversation, but I feel like Scott and Margie are doing a great job, but it's a fight to make sure we keep the affordable housing voice heard in that discussion.
Currently, two of the biggest points of contention or discussion are open space requirements in the CBD, Central Business District, and in the RAD, the River Arts District. Those are both zoning districts that currently do not require open space. And at least it's been my observation that again, it may be a silent majority of the group, because I'm not hearing a whole lot of other members speak up, are in support of keeping those as is. Again, the UFC, the Urban Forestry Commission, is pushing hard to introduce new open space requirements into the CBD. On a parallel note, we've also had a real discussion about modifying street tree planting standards within the CBD. Again, that Central Business District, downtown. And I think the majority of the group recognizes that that would be a more effective use of time and energy in getting a public benefit of better street trees than requiring private open space in downtown.
Cool. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Chris. All right, so we have a presentation on purpose-built. Is that right, Paul?
Yep, that's correct. And I want to introduce Evan Smith, who's joining us from Purpose-Built Communities. Good morning, Evan. I'll let him do introductions, as I know we're on some tight time here. Evan has been a very good partner as we try to get our footing on adding a purpose-built community here in Asheville, and always seems to be happy to take my phone calls. So thanks for that, Evan. For updates, I'll turn it over to him for a presentation. And Evan, I'm going to load up your slides.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for the invitation. It's great to be with everybody today. My name is Evan Smith. I'm a vice president of Purpose Built, and I know your time is precious, and there's someone else who's going to present too. So this is not in any means going to answer everything that and every thought you might have about Purpose Built, or our thoughts about how you could approach making even more neighborhoods in Asheville healthy and accessible to all incomes, but hopefully gives you a little sense. Paul, thank you for driving here. And last thing I should say before I jump in is Purpose Built. We're a little over 10 years now. Experience comes from the East Lake Initiative in Atlanta. That's some formative experience. And that got started before Purpose Built did. We are a nonprofit pro bono consulting firm who just offers technical assistance. We're building a network and a community of practice of efforts across the country that are utilizing a similar strategy. So that's a little bit about who we are. So, and what I'm going to talk today about is our why, a little bit about Purpose Built, what we call the foundation, which is that's literally like the Purpose Built entity, organizational entity, and then the Purpose Built network, which is this group of 28 efforts across the country that are the ones who are on the ground putting the strategies into practice and figuring out the right paths forward. So, Paul, if you'd advance. So we believe all people should live and thrive in a healthy neighborhood. From listening to the conversation for the past hour, I imagine this resonates deeply with you all. But when we sort of measure the gap between, is that happening or not? You can advance, Paul. We know that that's not the case. And that within many different cities, I would argue almost all sort of more major or larger cities in America, the experience for the people that live in that city varies wildly by the neighborhood that they live in. Here's one example from Chicago where, you live 5 miles away from someone else, your life expectancy is 16 years shorter. And we know that this disproportionately impacts people of color, and also disproportionately impacts, the sort of the brunt of concentrated poverty is felt by children as well. And so understanding this, so you can advance again, Paul. We understand that segregated neighborhoods of concentrated poverty were caused by centuries of structural racism, not the people. And that when we think about the outcomes associated with these places, it's not an accident. They were structured in a way that does not work particularly well for connecting that area with resources for a variety of reasons, some of them listed on the slide on the right. And so given the fact that, we didn't get here by accident, it's our thought we've got to be really intentional and thoughtful about the path forward. You all were talking about that as well. I'm sure that, resonates deeply. This is very hard to do, but we think this is critical to make sure that more and more people are able to, realize their dreams and contribute as fully to society as possible. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons to do this from a social justice perspective. Another one is just there is tons of human capital that is underutilized by our society because people do not have access to the opportunities that anyone needs to thrive. You can move forward. And so we believe the remedy must be intentional, as I mentioned, holistic, which means a little bit of everything, right? We believe the answer isn't housing alone or education alone or other programs and facilities alone. It's a tandem of things that need to work together in conjunction to not only support families and connect them with the resources that anyone needs to thrive, but also do that in a way that preserves a level of affordability long-term. So as investments are being made to the place that draw, market forces, that there's a level of protected affordability long-term. So the neighborhood remains a platform for a range of incomes, including the lowest income families who are living in Asheville or any other city. You can advance again, Paul. So given that, our vision is that all people of color, especially Black people, live and thrive in a healthy neighborhood. For a while at Purpose Built, we were less race explicit, but we believe, based on what we've seen from the data, that we have to be more bold and call this out more specifically. And our belief is that, and there's, the book that Heather McGee has written, The Sum of Us, I think describes this beautifully, that the pie is not fixed. It is possible to create a larger pie and make sure that everybody's able to thrive. We believe that's possible. You can advance. So I mentioned our vision, our how. We have a model that's being employed in 28 cities with many others exploring the viability of it. Does it make sense given the opportunity and want? And that is within a defined neighborhood, investments in mixed income housing, to protect affordability, but also make sure that there's not concentrated poverty in a specific space, because we know the outcomes for families and kids aren't good, and that also doesn't help connect that place to some of the some of the positive market forces that could occur by having a grocery store and other amenities like that. The second is a cradle to college education pipeline, thinking all the way from birth through 12th grade and beyond. Kids who live in this place have access to some of the best school opportunities and education opportunities in the entire area, regardless of their background. Everyone's thriving. And then investments in community wellness. This is programs and facilities. This varies more than any other portion of our model. It really responds to assets and needs. And that all that is coordinated by what's often a newly created nonprofit whose sole purpose is the coordination of this effort. Our goals in doing that are to advance racial equity, increase upward mobility, and improve health outcomes. You can go down, Paul. Thank you. So a little bit about why we believe in this idea of a community quarterback. I'll get to it as I go, but just to touch on it briefly here. This long-term coordination and long-term commitment is key. People like you all at the table, that is necessary and so important. But as I heard you all talk about all that's sort of on in your purview and plate, you were talking about the entire city and beyond, right? And so this would be, think of this as an additive sort of capacity and focus that's solely dedicated to the success of a particular neighborhood, making sure all the investments are coordinated and the intended outcomes are being achieved. So this, you can get advanced, Paul. So we believe that cross-sector partnership and collaboration is essential. You know, there's another way you could go about this, which is you create this entity that has an education arm and a housing arm and all these other things. Our belief is that there's a lot of great people doing a lot of great work who have access to a range of resources. And the idea is figuring out how those things fit together in a complementary way. You know, in some degree, this is totally intuitive, but from our experience, I'm sure you all know that people working, you know, sort of in collaboration long-term to continue to get better, that doesn't happen by accident. And that's really the role of the community quarterback. You can advance. So our network of local leaders that we're proud to be partnering with and support works with their community, local residents, but also with partners from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors who share the vision, want to work in collaboration to bring the vision to life. And here's a few pictures from everywhere from Omaha to Dallas to West Palm in the bottom right to Houston and Atlanta and in between. You can go down. So here's the 28 places that we're working. You know, largely in the Central Time Zone and East. That's primarily a function of the fact that we're in Atlanta. But there's, you know, so we're excited that this is growing over time. One of the things that's been great about this is that the approach taken in Eastlake is not the approach that everybody is taking, right? Everybody's thinking about housing and education and other stuff, but this is not a cookie cutter type idea. It responds to local needs and says, okay, sort of, you know, what makes sense for us, right? And we have guidance and best practices we can share, but we've learned a lot from our 28 network members, and there's been innovations that have emerged from that have made everyone better. You can go down. So we believe long-term commitment is necessary to achieve and then sustain the desired results. Eastlake's been at this for over 25 years. You know, you might go to Eastlake today in Atlanta and say, oh, wow, the buildings are built, the school's doing great, check this off, move on to the next one, right? And that might be appropriate for some partners there, but this community quarterback is thinking about, okay, what are the current needs? And a current need in that neighborhood is increased affordability. Because the initiative, the foundation acquired land long ago and just held it, that they're now building additional housing there, including some income restricted units, all fitting together. And if they weren't continuing to think about this, that wouldn't be possible. They're also making sure that as leadership transitions at the school and other partners, people are continuing to work together. You know, and then other efforts are a little bit more towards the beginning of their lifespan. And we're learning from everybody. You can advance, Paul. And so we support aspiring network members in three ways. One is one-on-one consulting. Happy to take Paul's phone calls or anyone else to strategize, share ideas. The next one is a community of practice. We have this for our prospective network members, but even more so for people that are network members. That's opportunities to meet with people that are kicking this idea around in other parts of the country. We have a monthly call that's a couple people from Asheville is sat in on. And the lastly is strategic partnerships. We, you know, understand from our experience who's a great mixed income housing developer, who's great in this space, and we can help make some of those introductions, and also to funding partners like the Low Income Investment Fund and others. So that's what I got. Thanks for indulging me in a very, me talking heavy presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if time allows, or discuss this at a future date if that's better.
Evan, I would just want to say thank you very much for being here. And it looks like we could be number 29 on the screen, if I have my numbers correctly. It's a lot of work. What I really appreciate about Purpose Built is it's a framework that's adaptable to your community, and it is very good to be at the table with Purpose Built. It's a lot of work to get everybody on home plate before you start leaping. And we're excited to see what could happen. And I hope this was helpful to everybody. Barry, I'll turn it back to you, but just wanted to give a big thanks to Evan for his initial partnership here.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Evan. What is, I mean, could you just, I know with our, the Cedar Hill project, so we've heard a lot about we're looking for it to be a purpose-built community. What is are we engaged, or what is the steps we've taken so far, or that we are in with this connected to that, that particular project?
I'm not sure about specific projects, and Paul, you might want to comment more. So, because we're pro bono, Barry, we don't have like a super defined scope up front, which I think some people really like. It does make it a little bit confusing to describe what we do, right? It's not just a checklist. So it's almost more, and this is kind of a crude analogy, but it's almost like a little bit like dating, right? It's like, this is what we can do. There's a lot of great ways to make the world a better place.
Sure.
We know how to help with one of them. Is this a good fit, right? And so it's really assessing that on both sides, and through conversation and really kicking the idea around with multiple people to see what the appetite is.
And Barry, just quickly, we started meeting with, I think I started talking with Purpose Built last June. And then we had our kind of first meeting with them and the city and HACA and other partners in August, September. And it's just a lot about, kind of figuring this out on home plate is how I always call about it, but particularly looking at what we're missing, in the overall framework model. And I think, Evan, if it's okay, one thing I think we've noticed is some real, how do we bring in real leadership from the business community?
Yeah.
Which I think is something that when I was in Wilmington, we struggled with when we thought about it down there. Same thing up here. Evan?
Yeah. We think everybody has things to contribute, and that there's not enough resources alone in the public sector or the private sector. It's really about the collaboration, right? And so we do think this business and civic leadership is a key participant. People from the local community, key participants, and then what we call sort of implementation partners, right? Like who sort of shares the vision around excellence and equity as it relates to the housing strategy, who has a track record of being able to deliver at really high levels. Can we get them to be part of this team? And it's our experience that people are, that you can get some really great, these implementation partners locally, maybe from elsewhere, want to be part of a team that is connected with, that is at its roots connected with the local community. There's deep community partnership there that's informing the strategy and the path forward. But there's also additional resources and networks that are being brought to the table via business and civic leaders that maybe don't live in the community but want to advance the vision.
Gotcha. No, I love the framework. Yeah, so it's not. I wasn't sure of like the scope. So you're not necessarily like a consultant that's brought in for specific projects. It's
a little bit more like broad kind of technical assistance and strategy development. So if we had to classify ourselves as like a type of consultant, we'd sort of be like a strategy consultant. But sort of early on thinking about how the pieces fit together, the thing that we will advocate for, Barry and others, is excellence and a focus on equity. And what we believe deeply about the housing strategy is that I hear y'all. There is a need for more affordable housing via income restricted units and just other ways to get to a price point that people can afford.
Gotcha. Okay.
Our deep belief is not to concentrate all that in the same place, because the outcomes for people that live in that place will not be maximized if that's the case. And so that's why we're deep advocates of mixed income housing, and just sort of offhand, like the number for us is like 20% market rate, sort of true market rate, levels of income restriction, all the way down to traditional public housing, 30% AMI and lower, maybe with 60 and 80% into the mix too. With an idea being that if any one of us went to these developments, you couldn't tell based on someone's address or if they applied to a job or something like that, whether they receive an income subsidy or not. Because unfortunately we know that has a stigmatizing effect, and we want to push people past that. And we think a way to do that is make sure that everybody's served well, regardless if they receive an income, a housing subsidy or not.
Yeah, I love the concept. And Andy, did you have a question? Because we have another presentation to move on.
Yeah, I'll keep this brief. I have a question for Paul and then a question for Evan. Paul, you mentioned the folks who've been involved in this conversation so far. You named the city and HACA and other partners. Can we get an update on who's been involved and what the outreach strategy is? I'm curious specifically about the school districts and the folks working in the schools in that area, the residents council with HACA, what's the community input been at this point?
Sure, and thanks for that. There has been a lot of conversation happening over the last 6 to 8 months in just initial conversation, but right now there's higher level talks happening between city management and the partners. So I think we'll have more to report on a direction as well as more information about community input. But right now, just trying to hash out some agreement points with executive directors and city management.
Okay, that doesn't exactly get to my question. I mean, it seems like you're a lot of meetings. How many meetings? Who's there? How's the community being invited to participate? This seems, from what Evan described, as a really community-focused process, and it feels like, we're lining up resources for implementation before we've had the conversations with the community.
The community focus is absolutely, as Evan suggested, first and foremost. I think what everyone's trying to figure out is what is to be communicated with that community. There have been some discussions. We've met monthly with Purpose Built for about 6 months, but we have not met in the last few months because I think that there are some discussions happening with longer term visioning or just trying to get everybody on home plate, but nothing will be done. I think everything that we've written down talks about an 8-month to 12-month community process, but the powers that be are trying to figure out that home plate, Andy.
Okay. Evan, real quick, a question for you. You talked about long-term commitment from that backbone organization or community quarterback. Yeah. How does that, what's been your experience with finding and maintaining funding for that position?
Yeah. So it's there's always a philanthropic need long term, and the success of the effort. Basically, community quarterbacks. Our experience has been that community quarterbacks can raise funds not only for their own operation, but a lot of times for the initiative writ large as well, or at least assist. And so that helps them kind of make the case too, or maybe they approach a capital campaign for, say, a new early learning center, but within that larger capital campaign, which is really focused on the operating gap and the capital needs for the early learning center, there's also a $500,000 or $1 million for operation of the community quarterback. So there's some creative strategies. It is. I appreciate the idea that you're not going to take it lightly, so that you can deliver long term. I think the success of the effort, the community quarterback has been able to make the case, and there's a growing kind of body of evidence put out by the Stanford Social Innovation Review and others about the benefit of backbone organizations. So there's other literature and resources to pull on there. I think it really just comes into practice when people can come and sort of see, oh, this is the difference that this capacity is making for this effort, versus like somebody wrote up a nice white paper, but they're actually not helping in any way. So I think it's just making sure that people are, delivering and people can see the value. Funders then respond.
All right. I think we do need to move on, but Duana, do you have something that you wanted to share? I saw your hand up
Hi. Yes, I did. Evan, I found your presentation real interesting. I like that it is intentional to the real racial disparities as far as wealth and home ownership and that wealth gap in the generation through that. And so I am very interested in learning more, especially around the community engagement and how intentional that process is. And I would love to learn more about that.
Great.
Thank you very much. And sounds like Paul's, we'll have an update, and I'm happy to join at any point too. But thank you for sharing that.
Really appreciate it, Evan. We're going to place his presentation in your shared material so everybody has it, and Evan can be available. I believe it's esmith@purposebuiltcommunities.org if you want to reach out, or feel free to reach out to me. But Evan, really appreciate your time.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Evan. Thank y'all. So I'm going to skip over just for time. So we're going to go to, there's a section called Innovations in Affordable Housing. Paul sent me an email about this. I've read with lots of interest about the 3D printing. So I'm really curious on this presentation. So Paul, if you want to go ahead and introduce Rick, love to hear what we got.
Thanks, Barry. Just wanted to queue up the video for our partner so we could skip the commercial session there. So I wanted to introduce Rick Ingram with his group. This kind of idea came up, Barry, and thank you for entertaining us with a lot of difficult news happening around affordable housing these days, especially in home ownership. I thought it might be nice to add a section about innovations in affordable housing towards the end of each meeting, just to give us some hope. So I'll turn it over to Rick here, and then I'll share a video when he's ready.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. My name is Rick Ingram. I'm the CEO and founder of IPR Homes, a new startup based out of North Carolina. I actually live in the Asheville area. I'm from Mars Hill. I just grew up about 20 minutes north of here, but we are operating kind of predominantly out of the Triangle, and we are focused on the 3D printing of homes. So this is maybe something you've come across. Your timeline, I feel like videos circulate constantly showing these innovations, but the technology, though it's still very much in its infancy, is advancing at a very, very rapid clip. And though I think it's unlikely that every home is going to be built in this manner in the next two or 3 years, we think that we're at a point now where we are really seeing commercial viability. So there are a few companies around the United States, one out of California, one out of Texas, that have started to make some really nice advancements that are showing promise, especially at the early stages in the affordable housing community context. We think that we have the capacity to sort of mirror the innovations that they're making. We have partnered with a residential construction company out of the Triangle, as well as with North Carolina State University and their Additive Manufacturing Center, to think through how we are developing a proprietary machine and a proprietary materials mix that we believe will contribute in some really significant ways to being able to increase the housing supply and bring down costs. So before I get into sort of any more specifics, I figured it might make sense for Paul just to show a sample video, just a short, little clip that shows what this technology looks like and how it works. And then after you guys see this, I'm happy to talk a little bit more about some of the advantages that I think that there are associated with this technology, and then how I see it maybe coming into the markets here in the Southeast. So Paul, if you want to hit go on that, we can watch it together.
This Dutch couple just got the keys to their new digs in what is now the very first 3D printed home in the Netherlands. Elise Lutz and Harry Deckers are retired shopkeepers who are touring their 2-bedroom concrete bungalow. Harry says they feel safe inside because of a bunker. Their home was printed in 24 parts in a nearby factory before it was taken to apply and assembled. Designers say the house is up to Dutch building standards and is the first of 5 in what they're calling Project Milestone. Even though 3D printing homes is a new concept, it's reportedly a way to cut costs, reduce the amount of cement used, and in the Netherlands, it provides another option where there is a shortage of experienced bricklayers. They say more sophisticated home designs are on the way, and that will make for a more environmentally sustainable inside digital.
So as you see, that's just a little clip. I think that we're seeing more and more of these around the world where folks are understanding the value of this technology, which is it's faster. That home, they said, it was printed in a warehouse. It was assembled in a day. The speed at which you can print these homes are remarkably fast. So some folks are printing, up to 600-700 square foot homes in 24 hours. Larger homes are taking 48 hours, 72 hours, 100 hours. But if you're doing it within a week, you compare that to the time that it takes to do a traditional stick-built, wood-framed home. It's dramatic time savings. And if you can save time, that means you can build more units. It's not only a time savings, it's also a material savings. So as I'm sure that a lot of you are aware of, lumber, the predominant use of building new homes has gone up 300% in the last year. And, we're seeing prices begin to stabilize, but they haven't reached that equilibrium point. And it's a real question of whether or not we're going to see it come back down to sort of the traditional levels that people are accustomed to. That's fine for home builders because, they pass those increases in price on to the consumer. It's very bad for the housing market because it makes homes more expensive at every level. So we are looking at a proprietary concrete mix that we're developing in-house. The guys at NC State are sort of leading the development behind that. And then we have a team of internal engineers that we're hiring out who will also contribute to that. But we're using concrete, and concrete is a much more resilient material than wood. It is the thermodynamic capabilities of it are much stronger. It is more weather resilient. It lasts longer. It is not vulnerable to fires. Your insurance premiums on concrete-based home are considerably lower. So there are a ton of advantages there. There's a ton of advantages on the labor side, whereas it's very hard for home builders today to find enough labor to do traditional stick-built homes, which is inhibiting the development of more homes and sort of limiting the supply, which are creating these strange market dynamics. This can be operated with very little labor, just specifically related to the framing and the building of the exterior walls. You can run one of these machines with about 3 to 5 people. That's normally what it takes on site to do the exterior framing. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the labor is, and that's something that we're really cognizant of, is we're not trying to automate every single person out of a job here. All of the sort of fixture work, all of the HVAC work, that's still done traditionally. So you're still working with local community partners to fulfill those needs. But out of an entire home building process, about 40% of all of the labor costs associated with a new build are associated with framing the home, because it's a very labor intensive process. It's very complicated. And not only to mention sort of the cost of the labor as being a huge savings, it's also the availability of labor. People are suggesting that following the recession, home builders are struggling to even find enough people available to do this work. And as sort of the new generation of younger workers are entering the market, fewer and fewer are going into construction. So it is a structural problem that we're seeing. So, we are in the process of designing our first prototype that we are going to put into place in a first stage community project out in Littleton, North Carolina. We don't have an exact time frame because, as I'm sure you guys know, technological development can vary quite dramatically on time frame, but we are aiming to have that done between probably June 2022 and September of 2022. And one of the things that I think is really exciting about this is not just the development of the technology and its potential applications to housing markets, but it's the ability for us to bring in folks like yourself to the process as we are putting this together. Littleton, North Carolina is a rural community out in sort of northeastern North Carolina, and one of the equity investors in our company has a series of land, and he has close affiliations with the engineering department at NC State, and he's very excited about this technology and has sort of just given this land as a test case. Like, you guys go and you build. And, we would love to test the theory. If you build it, they will come. We would love to invite you guys out to see the progress, see what we're doing, walk around the home, walk around the structures, ask us questions, and then really explore the possibility of getting that into other markets. Because, we, like I said at the beginning, I don't think that this is going to replace every single new home build in the near term. It might in the long term, but I think that where we have a real opportunity is thinking about how we can apply this technology to things like affordable housing, sort of cottage courts, cottage communities, accessory dwelling units. We think that we'll have the capacity with our first printer to print structures between 800 and 1,200 square feet to do about 2 or 3 bedrooms. And then we'll be working with community partners around the state to have, actual traditional home builders on site who can do the fixtures, do the windows, do the doors, do the plumbing. And then we'll have partnerships with, appliance manufacturers who can get these things into homes. But I think that we're at a time where we need all the help we can get in trying to get more housing on the market. And, the thing that I haven't mentioned is price, but all of the elements all the savings that you can render through this development results in a much, much lower price, which is ultimately the thing that we want. Good homes that are durable, resilient, and they also cost a lot less. So, there are various folks on the market right now who are doing this, and their houses are going for 50% at the market rate. You never know what you're going to be looking at until you get your own product. But I would anticipate, savings of 20, 30% out of the gate. And hopefully in the long run, we would be able to do even better than that. And the incentives line up well for us because, the machine is able to do things very efficiently. So we can offer make good money. So it makes business sense. It allows, that's where we are. And we've got a long road. But, I wanted to give you guys this background, and I'm happy to answer a few questions if y'all have any.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I really appreciate this. I've followed, Icon and some of the Austin projects, and I think California's got some going on as well. So I'm real curious, when that might be coming here. So you're thinking, it sounds like you said maybe mid next year you might have a prototype.
So I think that we will probably explore our first community partnerships with folks in early 2023. That's what I anticipate.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think the whole. I love the agenda item innovations. Paul. I think it was a good idea because again, some of this is so depressing that it's good to hear some of the projects that are in the works and ideas and concepts for how to do this, how to build more efficiently to help bring costs down.
Thanks, Barry, and happy to, if anyone else has any ideas, just to, like on a positive note, to try to end, and any other innovations that we could talk about in future meetings. Rick was gracious to be here. He's got an Asheville connection, watching my ethnic gut. So it's not a sales type of pitch necessarily, but it's a great way to share innovations that could be helpful in this continuing affordable housing struggle, especially around home ownership. So I'm grateful for Rick's time. And if anyone has any other future ideas, just let or me know, or both, Barry. That's great.
Yep, great. Thanks, Scott. Did you have a hand up, Scott?
Hi, Rick. Thanks for the presentation. I was just curious, right off the bat, have you run into any kind of either potential headaches or barriers with state building code? And I guess on a tag-on question, the area that you're building out in Littleton, is that in an incorporated area or is it out unincorporated county?
It is, yeah, it's an incorporated county. It's in Halifax. It's in Halifax County. It's an incorporated town. It's a small town. But, we are building our prototype very intentionally around regulatory questions and making sure that we achieve code compliance at every stage. So we have not run into issues yet, but it is at the forefront of our mind, and we are engaging early in conversations with all the relevant stakeholders to make sure that the machine that we come up with and that we create, and that the first thing it spits out, it will be code compliant. So we're going to be very deliberate in making sure that we're talking to all the right people along the way. That's a huge driver of what we're doing.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Great. Andy, I see you have it. Is your hand up from this or from previous?
Sorry, I'm bad at that.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Thank you, Rick. Yeah, thank you, Rick. And yeah, we certainly look forward to. Actually, I do have a question from Babs here.
Hi, just a quick question. How much of a constraint is having to develop the proprietary concrete mix?
Yeah, it's actually the most challenging part. The mechanical sort of engineering behind this technology is not that different from your traditional 3D printer, believe it or not. It's sort of just a scaled up, very large version, which is a cool thing to see. But the materials side is going to be something that I think, continually gets improved upon. We have a structural engineer at NC State who is a concrete specialist. And we also have a materials scientist at NC State working on this thing, and we'll build out an internal team. It's not going to be the thing that we get right out of the gate. It will be an iterative process where you're consistently changing and modifying the mix, because we want this to be a thing where the homes last 100 years, not just 20 or 30 years. So I think the materials question is going to be a tough one. We've got a very good starting block. We believe that there are ways to reinforce sort of traditional concrete with certain elements that we've already identified. So we think we've got a good lead, but it's going to take a lot of testing to get this right. But we think that, the first thing we put on the market, as I told Scott, it's going to be code compliant, and we're going to feel comfortable that this is safe and that people can live in this safely. So yeah, we'll see. It's going to take a long time to get it exactly right, but I don't think that we should let perfect be the enemy of good here, because this can certainly be a way to provide folks housing who don't have it right now.
Thank you.
Duana?
Hi, Rick. As you're, I'm bouncing off the Babs question about the mix. So are there any environmental things that you ran in, environmental issues or questions that you ran into issues with, or anything like that around the carbon footprint or anything?
Yeah, so these homes are dramatically more sustainable than your traditional stick-built home, because the idea of additive manufacturing is that you're only using the materials that you need. There's no waste associated with a home. It comes from a design, from a software design, and then you use literally the exact material that you need to output it. So it's an incredibly sustainable design. We think that the sort of carbon footprint of these homes will be considerably less, magnitudes less than a traditionally built home.
Okay. Great. Yeah, look forward to hearing more about this and following the technology. Yeah, I think just one of the other, not on concrete, but there was a big startup called Katerra, which was trying to focus on laminated timber, and I think unfortunately it's a big one that just shut down this week. It was a huge one that was working on kind of innovative methods and specifically for modular construction, and that just went belly up this week. But I was excited to read about and hear about new technologies, and I look forward to hearing more about yours, Rick, because I love that that's happening here in North Carolina.
Good deal.
Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you guys for letting me stop by, and you guys can feel free to email me if you think of anything or would like to have sort of a side conversation on this. Paul has my email, but I'll just give it to you real quick. It's Rick.A.Ingram, INGRAM @gmail.com. So you guys feel free to email me anytime, and happy to come back and chat and give you guys updates as we sort of get down the road of development of the hardware and materials.
Thanks, Rick. If you want to put that in the chat before you head out, that's great. If you know how to the Google Meets, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Great. So I'm going to step back real quick about, I see there's an item on our agenda under the work plan that talks about a partner event with LOTSAR. Paul, can you fill us in on that, please?
Sure, I can. And so Matt Allen from the Land of the Sky Regional our Association of Realtors is here, and he reached out. Nikki and I did a presentation, and we do some work with them often around affordable housing. And then Matt reached out about a possible, like, some kind of summit or outreach event, etc. And then thinking that AHEC was this week, I invited him to the meeting to maybe do a pitch in some sort of partnership, maybe around home ownership or something. So I thought I'd let you all chat. And
yeah,
you could
I'll be really, really quick. So basically, we partner with the city and county to create this pamphlet on affordable housing developments around town. Some other tips about fair housing, tenants' rights, physical legal. And, I don't think a lot of people know about this. And so my idea was to reach out to National Association of Realtors, since they have some nice funds, and get some grant money to put on a forum where we would introduce this to people, market it to the community, perhaps have, Paul, of course, and/or Nikki would come and give a truncated version of the presentation they gave recently at LOTSAR, and then have some affordable housing developers come as well. Don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen, but, anybody, Kirk Booth, Mountain Housing, Homeward Bound, beloved Asheville, come and talk about the ins and outs, the difficulties in developing affordable housing. And so I just wanted to come and throw that out there. In the early stages, I wanted to see if you guys could help me formulate what that forum might look like, and then I could pitch it to NAR to get some grant money to put on that forum to mainly introduce this, but also introduce people to affordable housing developers and the issues involved in getting that off the ground. Great.
Yeah, I think one idea maybe this would be a good thing to, when we create our have the meeting of our Connect committee, we can actually task them with you with this, because that's really what we're saying is we need to get more information from the public, but we need to get more information out to the public.
Right.
So I think that would be, for the sake of time, and I totally hear you. We need to get those out on the streets and to the people more. And I think that that might be a great. I'll get your email, and then when we have the meeting set up for the Connect task force, that's something that LOTSAR should definitely have a seat. Some representation of. I know Babs is on the local realtor affordable housing committee, but definitely more input from that, and I think that might help you see some things where the National Association of Realtors might be able to step in and help. Was there a specific, like, I see there's like an August date on that? Was there something specifically floated for August?
Not necessarily. Again, that just seemed like the soonest that we could get it together and properly market it, and of course apply for the grant funds from NAR to put it on. So again, it doesn't necessarily need to be then.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Yeah, I think what we'll do is connect. Yeah, for our task force, we'll have you connect with the Connect group, and then see how we can work on getting that out. Any other, just I'm kind of moving along for timeline. Any other committee members have questions or thoughts they want to share or ask of Matt while he's here?
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to it, and let's just keep the conversation going, because the impetus for this, just really quickly, was I went to something the other day that the Chamber of Commerce and some local service industry people put on about the difficulties they're facing, and I introduced this to Jacob Sessions, who has some restaurants around the town, and he said, "Man, I know some people who would love to get this information. I had no idea." Yeah. And so it's really just about information sharing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, as we discussed in our earlier part of the meeting about the rental arrears that some people are facing, I think that's also, it's one of those items that we need to share with the people. And yeah, I get a good, I own the Thirsty Monk, so I get a good read also on kind of what the needs are of folks, and we try to really make sure that we're getting getting the message out to those who need it the most. So yeah, I appreciate your efforts in this, and we will do our part to assist you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. If you could put your email in the chat, that way we have that. That would be great.
Let me see if I can manage this. I'm very well versed in Zoom, but not as much of this. Oh, here we go.
Great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite, Paul.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. So I do have a public comment that came in, and so I knew I did balance time for that. Do we have one thing I want to discuss real quick is we're discussing about our July meeting. So our meeting would be the first, would fall on July 1st. I'm still okay with that. If we can just get maybe a raise of hands from everybody, if a July 1st still works for you. All right, so I think we're good. So I think from what at least from the faces that I can see on my Brady Bunch screen, it looks like we have enough to have a meeting. So let's just plan on keeping that. Will that work for your staff, Paul?
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing is that I'll be preparing to have surgery, but if I am not in surgery, I'll be on.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate your dedication there.
Gives me something to focus on.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. In some of the future agenda items, is there anything specific that there's something about? Is there anything in there, Paul, that we should make sure we cover in this meeting to discuss, to put on people's thought radar for the next?
No, if anyone has any creative thoughts around some of those ideas, right now, I don't think at the moment there's a lot of necessary appetite about some of those new policies or policy changes, but that doesn't mean one day it won't hit the radar and someone will want to go. But just some thoughts. I think what we're most excited about is to showcase a website at some point and tell our community investment story from the last 5 years and our partnership with UNC Chapel Hill School of Government, which should be in July or August.
Okay. Great. Go ahead.
I got one question.
Sure.
Paul, is there any way that we could get an update on the houses that were the land that was set aside for the reparations? I think y'all were doing some work around that. Has that been completed?
Yeah, there is a presentation at some point scheduled to go to HCD, but that work has been ongoing. They're trying to get through that with identifying all of the land out there through urban renewal, as well as putting a dollar capital cost on that. And you'll be hearing more about that in the next couple of months. It's a lot of work, and UNC Asheville's at the table. There's been a lot of half-day meetings, but it's just they're trying to make sure to get that right. And you should be hearing more soon, Duana.
Great. Thanks, Duana, for the question. Thanks, Paul. All right, so we have a public comment that has come in. It was an email and I think is it in everyone's package? It was a comment about, last night the planning committee passed the Charlotte Street, one of the Charlotte Street projects to send to council. So there will be another public opportunity. There should be public input time at council time, but there was a comment that came in, regarding the Charlotte Street project. But it is in the agenda. It should be in our package, so that's available for the public to see. Do we have any callers that are on the line?
We do not have any callers on the line at this time.
Great. Thank you. Then with that, actually, I hear that we have to clear this channel. So with that, unless anyone has anything they'd like to add in 2 minutes, is there any other comments, thoughts? We are good. We're ending right at 11:30. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we will have our regular June 1 meeting. July 1. And then I will send out emails about our task forces so we can try to coordinate a meeting possibly in June. So Thank you all. Have a
Thank
wonderful day.
you.
Thanks,
Bye, y'all.
everybody.
Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you.